If you're fortunate enough to have mild autumns and winters, you may not even need to buy an entirely different winter beater bike. So here's exactly how you can set up your fair weather bike to ride in the cold and rain, along with some good resources for where to buy cheap components. For fair weather ride quality with winter durability, check out our channel sponsor Wabi Cycles, linked at the top of the description. What's up? I'm Zach Gallardo. Life is short, but don't make it shorter, so ride your bike every day to be reasonably dangerous, and subscribe for more fixed gear and cycling videos just like this one every Thursday and Saturday at 6 p.m. Pacific. I'm going to be recommending some components that will help you to get through your cold and rainy commute. You can check those out linked in the description at any point during this video. First thing to prepare your daily bike for cold and wet riding is to make sure that you have sealed bearing components in your headset, bottom bracket, and hubs. I am a huge proponent of having sealed bearing everything because in my eyes they're just better than loose ball bearing components. When it's raining, loose ball bearing components can get the grease washed off of them, which can lead to creaking components and ones that don't run as smoothly. Sealed bearing components, on the other hand, last a lot longer with less maintenance, and they will run more smoothly throughout the cold and rain. It's just a win-win-win. But if you have a lower spec'd bike, it's a good idea to go through your headset, bottom bracket, and hubs and repack them so you have a fresh layer of grease come winter. And that is exactly why I always look out for sealed bearing components in my bike reviews, because they're just better, especially under wet conditions. Tires are a vital component for wet condition cycling that you might want to respec in the wet season. I recommend to get tires that are as wide as your frame can fit, because wider tires run at lower pressure will have 1, better puncture resistance, and 2, better traction for slippery conditions. And speaking of puncture protection, some tires do have a strip lined inside of the rubber that help protect against flats. These are good to have in the cold and rainy season because a lot of times there can be more debris in the road, thus increasing the likelihood of getting a flat. And if you can, I recommend that you do everything that you possibly can to avoid having to change a flat in the cold and rain during the winter. And that usually means getting a good set of tires with puncture protection. Do note though that a strip of puncture protection in your tires will usually cause your ride quality and feel to degrade. Tougher tires tend to be a bit harsher riding, but I've been riding on 28C Gatorskins and these tires haven't really sacrificed much at all in terms of ride quality and puncture protection. The tire doesn't feel too stiff and it actually does have some give, but at the same time there is a strip that will protect against flats. And overall, the rubber compound is surprisingly plush for how tough this tire is, and it just makes my bike feel like it's really well planted. It's grippy in the corners and it's grippy when sprinting, and overall the Gatorskins are just a great tire for winter or otherwise. Next up, you might want to consider a drivetrain swap because all of the road grit that the rain brings out is really terrible for your drivetrain. So before you ride out in the cold or wet, consider swapping your chain ring, and cog or cassette. Since these components all work together, they will also get damaged and wear down together. And that road grit is the worst for all of them. So swap your drivetrain out for more affordable components so you can keep your nice drivetrain buttery smooth come spring. If you're looking for affordable drivetrain components, I recommend checking out your local bike shop first. If you're cool with them, you can ask if they have any spare parts lying around. At least for fixed gear bikes, a lot of people that buy the completes automatically upgrade their drivetrains, so a lot of bike shops will have the stock drivetrain components just lying around that they're probably just going to throw out. So if you're cool with your bike shop, you can ask them if you can buy them for a pretty cheap price, and sometimes they'll even just give it to you for free. Now, my number one maintenance tip for keeping your bike running buttery smooth is to keep it clean. And under wet conditions, the best way to keep your bike clean is to prevent any grit from getting on it with fenders. They don't look the best in a lot of people's eyes. They can be a pain to install, but once you use them, you're going to love them. They protect you by keeping your behind, your shins, and most importantly, your socks dry, and they protect your bike by blocking the road spray from getting up onto your frame and into your drivetrain, which, as we discussed, can be a pretty costly replacement. Depending on what type of bike you have and the clearances you have will determine what kind of fenders you can get. For most track bikes and fixed gear bikes, bikes that don't have a ton of clearance, or even the mounts for fenders, I recommend getting these temporary fenders. These install and uninstall in just a few seconds, but they do a good enough job of keeping you dry, although you will still experience some spray. I've been using ass savers, and it does, as the name implies, it saves your ass from getting wet. Next up are clip-on fenders. If you have a little bit more clearance, these will give you more protection, but you do have to take a bit more time to install them. One of the most popular clip-on fenders are the SKS Race Blades. And of course, if you have a lot of clearance, you can laugh at the rest of us with all of your full fender options that keep you drier and cleaner during the wet season. The next spec change you might want to consider is swapping out your wheels if you use rim brakes. All of that road grit that the rain brings out is really terrible for your braking surfaces on your rim. And once those rim braking surfaces wear out enough, you will eventually have to replace your rim, which can be one of the most costly expenses for cycling during the rainy season. To avoid that, you can get a cheap set of wheels from eBay or a bike co-op so you can continue to enjoy your beautiful riding and beautiful looking wheels once the weather turns better. And for my fellow fixed gear riders, if you run both a front and a rear brake, consider taking off your rear brake during the rainy season, because most of the stopping power comes from the front brake anyway, and you can still backpedal for that additional stopping power. You'll be just as safe, all while saving your rear rim from grinding down. And in addition to your braking surfaces, cold and wet conditions can grind down your brake pads, making your stopping power feel cruddy. It doesn't feel nice, and it can be dangerous, so you may want to consider swapping out your brake pads to Kool Stop Salmon brake pads. These are one of the most popular brake pad options, and for very good reason. They have an amazing feel and stopping power when they're dry, and they still feel great and have great stopping power even under wet conditions. And these are hands down the best brake pads that I've ever tried. Everybody raves about disc brakes and how great they are under wet conditions, but if you've got to use rim brakes, Kool Stop Salmon brake pads are the next best thing. But don't take my word for it, you can read all of the glowing reviews about them over on Amazon. Now, if you'd like to be featured in a video, comment below your best advice for cycling in the cold and rain. So let me know in the comments, and I'll compile the best advice for cold and rainy cycling into a video of its own. And speaking of cold and wet cycling, our channel sponsor Wabi Cycles has bikes that are great for just that. Wabi steel frame sets are ED coated inside and out, making them very rust resistant, unlike most other steel frame sets. Wabis are also specced with sealed bearing components in the headset, bottom bracket, and hubs, so they'll spin buttery smooth all throughout winter. Which is great news, since they're either made out of lightweight and high-end Reynolds 725 or Columbus Spirit tubing, giving them a very lively and fun ride quality. So forget the winter beater bike and enjoy fair weather ride quality with winter durability, and check out our channel sponsor Wabi Cycles, linked at the top of the description. And don't watch this upcoming video if you haven't ridden your bike yet today. Instead, ride your bike every day to be reasonably dangerous, even if it is just on the rollers.